Welcome to SATAC's Year 12 Information series, where we'll give you the key things you need to know when applying to university through SATAC. We hope this series is helpful, but as always, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to contact us by phone, email, or in person. We'll make sure that you get the help you need. This is the third of 3 videos. If you haven't yet checked out videos 1 and 2, I recommend you go back and catch up on what we looked at there before continuing on. In this final video of the series for International Year 12 students, we're going to be talking about the topic that we get the most questions about at SATAC, Year 12 scores and ranks. We're going to start with what each of the main scores and ranks are and how they're calculated. We're talking about University Aggregate scores, the ATAR, and the Year 12 selection rank. Part of that discussion will also cover scaling and how adjustment factor schemes are applied. We will also touch on the IBAS and how interstate Year 12s can expect adjustment factors to apply to them. Let's start with the University Aggregate and the ATAR for SACE and NTCET students. If you're an IB applicant and you don't need SACE information, I suggest you skip to the time shown here on the left side of the screen. If you're applying with an Australian qualification from interstate, then you should seek information about your scores and how your ATAR is calculated from the relevant tertiary admissions centre in your state or territory. You can skip to this time here on the right if you don't want to learn all about the SACE or IB scores. The first one we're going to look at is your University Aggregate score, which is always out of 90. That score is made up of your 90 best credits of Stage 2 study, which we split out into 2 groups. The first group is 60 credits, which comes from your top 3 20-credit subjects or valid pairs. The next group, worth 30 credits, is called the flexible option, because that can be made up of a whole range of things. We can use 20-credit subjects, 10-credit subjects, we can halve 20-credit subjects, and if you've done any recognised studies like a vet certificate or a university course, up to 20 credits of the 30-credit flexible option can come from your recognised studies. If you end up with more than the 90 credits needed for a University Aggregate, we'll use your best 90 credits, provided that you followed all the rules around counting restrictions, precluded combinations, and timing. So we basically add up all the scaled scores from your best usable 90 credits, which is your University Aggregate, and that then gets converted into your ATAR on a scale of 0 to 99.95, which is a rank. And this brings us to scaling. Scaling is a little bit complex, but it's also a really necessary part of the process. So let's have a look at what scaling is and how it works, so that when you get your results in December, you have some perspective on any scaling that may have occurred. Scaling is something that we have to do so that we can fairly compare student performance across different subjects. No 2 subjects are exactly alike in terms of the content, assessment tasks, and learning outcomes. They're all different. The single most common misconception about scaling is that the so-called difficult subjects get scaled up and any supposedly easy subjects get scaled down. Now, the thing is, there's no definition for what's difficult and what's easy. Different people find different things difficult and easy. Physics might come really naturally to one person and be completely mystifying to another. The only thing that determines how a subject is scaled is the performance of every single student studying that subject in that year, both on its own and as part of every possible study pattern in that year. To work out which subjects get scaled up or down, we pair each subject with every other subject. Consider a pairing of modern history and chemistry. Let's say in 2025, out of all of the SACE Stage 2 students, 750 students had both modern history and chemistry in their study pattern. Of that 750 students, let's say 450 of them did better in chemistry than in modern history. That tells us that in 2025, more students did better in chemistry than in modern history. Then we compare chemistry with something else, health and well-being, for example. And let's say once again, out of every student who did both chemistry and health and well-being in Year 12, more students did better in chemistry than in health and well-being. We keep pairing chemistry with every other subject until we've exhausted all combinations. And if we find that overall, students performed better in chemistry than in whatever other subject they were studying alongside chemistry, we would scale chemistry down. If the opposite had happened, we would scale it up. We do this process for all Year 12 subjects, and that's how we decide what's scaled up and what's scaled down. So at the end of Year 12, for each subject, you'll get 2 things. A scaled score out of 10 or 20, depending on the credit value of the subject, which indicates your position, that is, how you performed compared to everyone else doing that subject, and an overall grade from A+ to E- that indicates your own standalone performance. Out of these two things, position and performance, there's only one that you can control, and that is your performance. You can't control your position because in order to do that, you'd have to control everyone else's performance. Our best advice is to focus on performing as well as you can in the subjects that you've chosen. We calculate your university aggregate from your scaled scores and then convert that into an ATAR based on population statistics and the performance of the whole Year 12 cohort nationally. The final piece of the puzzle is your Year 12 selection rank. If you get any adjustment factors, and we'll talk in a moment about how you might be eligible for adjustment factors, we can't just add the extra points to your ATAR, since it's a rank, and changing one person's rank shifts everyone else's around too. Instead, we take your university aggregate, the score, and add the points to that, and then reconvert the whole thing using the same calculations that are used for the ATAR into a new rank, your Year 12 selection rank. Your ATAR will never change. If you were applying interstate or overseas, for example, your ATAR would be the figure that they would use. But for a SATAC undergraduate application, your selection would be based on this new Year 12 selection rank. It functions very much like the ATAR as far as SATAC is concerned, but it is not an ATAR, and again, your ATAR will never change. This next section is for IB students, so if you don't need to know about IB scores, you can skip to the time shown below on the left here. Let's discuss the diploma score and the IBAS. Your diploma score is out of 45 points and is calculated by the IBO based on your results. The IBO will give us all Australian IB scores as soon as they're released. Remember to ensure that you've given permission for us to receive your results so that we can process them straight away. Once we have your diploma score, we will then give you a more granular score called the International Baccalaureate Admissions Score, or the IBAS. The IBAS will start with the same whole number as your diploma score. We simply add increments of 0.25. For example, if you got a diploma score of 38, then your IBAS would be either 38.00, 38.25, 38.5, or 38.75. This accounts for your average performance within each band of subject results. The IBAS will be communicated to you through your school, even if you don't have a SATAC application. In order to allow you to compete in the same way as other people who have completed an Australian state or territory curriculum and received an ATAR, we will use the more granular IBAS and convert it to an equivalent ATAR on a range from 0 to 99.95. This rank will function just like a regular ATAR, and the rest of the process is the same for you and applicants who studied Australian curricula like the SACE or the VCE. This equivalent ATAR is called a combined rank. It's important to remember that the IBAS and the combined rank do not replace your diploma score, which will always be the score given to you by the IBO. If there are any updates to your diploma score as a result of an inquiry upon results or an EUR or other changes from the IBO, they will inform us, and then we'll recalculate your IBAS and combined rank accordingly. You can rest assured that we are in constant communication with the IBO whenever there are changes to the final results of an IB student who studied in Australia, and those updates will be reflected in your SATAC application if you have one. As an IB student, you are entitled to any adjustment schemes for which you are eligible. If there are any adjustments based on equity or the language, literacy and numeracy scheme, this will be calculated as part of your combined rank. So let's talk about how those adjustment factors come into play. There are two schemes, the university's equity scheme and the university's language, literacy and mathematics scheme. The university's equity scheme grants 5 points in one of two ways, either based on your school of enrolment or on your individual circumstances. The SATAC website has a section all about adjustment factors. It has information about eligibility criteria for individual equity, what information and documents are required, and if you want to apply, you can download the form, fill it out, and attach it along with any relevant documentation to your application in mySATAC. Then we have the university's language, literacy and mathematics scheme, which grants 2 points per subject up to a maximum of 4 points for successful completion of the subjects listed here. Successful completion being a minimum grade of C-. And you don't need to apply for these either. We'll know once you have your results which subjects you did and what your results are. So if you're eligible, the points will be applied automatically. If you're an IB or an interstate applicant, we will apply that to the equivalent subjects if you have successfully completed those. There are a few courses that don't use the language, literacy and mathematics scheme. You can check the list on our website. The last thing I want to go over with you is what your scores look like in mySATAC. Now, when you apply, it's highly likely that your results will not be out yet. You are therefore not going to be able to see any ranks next to your preferences. After the results come out, you'll be able to see Year 12 selection ranks against your preferences. For most of you, that's going to be really straightforward with the same rank against all of your preferences. For some of you, however, it might be a bit more complex. There are some courses that have extra requirements, and we talked about those back in the first video. Remember how the institutions will look after things like the UCAT portfolios and auditions? Well, these extra requirements are a critical part of the selection process for these kinds of courses. The Year 12 selection rank forms part of the scoring system used, but not all of it. And for that reason, we don't display the Year 12 selection rank against those kinds of preferences. You may also find that you have two different scores. If you have one or more of the preferences that do not use the university's language, literacy and mathematics scheme, you might see a different Year 12 selection rank depending on whether each preference accepts the scheme. And remember, the points aren't added to the ATAR, they're added to the aggregate, which is then converted into another rank. So it's unlikely to be as clear as being able to see a difference equal to the adjustments you qualify for. We hope this has clarified some things for you around your Year 12 results and what goes into each individual figure. However, as always, you're welcome to give us a call here at SATAC if you have any further questions regarding this. Thank you for joining us, and good luck with the rest of your studies and whatever you choose to do next year. We'll be here if you need us.